we go. Welcome to another episode of the Three Man Weave College Basketball Podcast. We are back after a fortnight plus 2 days hiatus, taking a little time off in the offseason, folks. That's what we're doing, catching up, making sure the zeal for college hoops does not wear down. Don't want to wear thin on that. I am Jim Root, back in my humble abode in Chicago. Good to be back in the home studio, joined by Kai McEwen, Matt Cox. Kai's fresh off a haircut. Matt is bundled up like he is an Eskimo. Kai, how are you feeling? I'm going to go to you first before we get the Matt breakdown.
I'm doing good, Jim. I got my my lunch next to me, a late lunch today, so I might be.
What are you having?
I might be Matt circa 5 years ago when he used to eat on the podcast, but no, I will politely mute myself and go off screen. I'm doing well. I got a haircut. It was great. Matthew, how are you doing? You look like you're in the tundra of the north. Part of the world.
Well, it's a twofold decision to wear my floppy Blizzard hat here. One is just sort of ashamed by the lack of hair quality relative to both of you, both off fresh trims yourselves. And then secondly, more importantly, had some headache migraine symptoms today, guys. So trying to manage that, with kind of the shell type feel here. So yeah, just a few, I'll battle through as I usually do, but that's where we're at today.
So you're having a little Kenny pain in your head as you think about the ACC. Boom, boom, boom. It's going to be a great show. We are reviewing the season for the ACC. We're going to talk about the conference as a whole, each team individually, the kind of state of those programs, given some of the coaching changes that they've gone through in their past seasons. We're going to go through board bets. We have to call those back. If we're going to do them in the preseason, we got to bring up the results. I will be buried under the success of Matthew in that section, already dreading it. Matt, just get me to the Jeopardy episode. That's what I want. That's where I exact my revenge for that.
Fitting drop there, Jim. We just saw Kai and I, our King Russ, the host of the Jeopardy episode, everyone's annual favorite tradition. And as we discussed, I'll probably bask in a mud slide of shame for that, but I will gloat in my glory of best bet. Over under board bet success this offseason. So good stuff by me. Well done, man.
Yeah. Matthias was strong on the preseason opinions. We'll give him that. Kai, before we get into the section of the podcast, we're going to go reviews. And of course, folks, leave reviews if you can of the 5-star variety. Shout out to Jay Pitty for the opening tunes. We love those. And subscribe to the pod on iTunes. Get into it on SoundCloud, Auto Radio, wherever you listen to your pods. But of course, the Apple reviews are where we're going. Kai, we've got one, huh?
We do. JC Watner, our old review buddy. He's left a few reviews, which is allowed and encouraged. Best podcast ever is the title of the review. Hey, boys, I'm back with another review to basically thank you guys for being the most entertaining podcast and especially for helping me fall in love with college basketball. Love to hear that. He's been watching us since our show on YouTube with FTN. So a couple years ago now, we mentioned we had a podcast. He's been listening since. Good reminder to plug all of our stuff, guys, in every single show. You never know with the new listeners where they might come from. He says, I can genuinely say the Weave has helped me become obsessed with college basketball. For that, I thank you. Also, are we sure Texas is making the dance next year? The roster and them being in the Big 12 now a little revamped is a little concerning. Thanks, guys. Thoughts on Texas? Jim?
We're going to talk about them in the roundup, both good for the roster and bad for the roster, some ins, some outs. I'm guessing that this review was left before A. Smith committed, just because they
this is back in
really
17th.
lacked some offensive pop before then, and adding him certainly helps, but they've had some guys go out the door as well. It's going to be a very strong league with the additions of the Big 12. Matthew, we obviously didn't give Rodney Terry a home run higher in the coaching grades. I think it's dicey, but the roster has at least improved since this review was left.
Yeah, like the 5 guys they do have, I guess there's not really a slam dunk that the tentative starting lineup that you have here, Jim, in your master sheet is the real one. But A. Smith, Tyrese Hunter, Dylan Mitchell, Dylan Disu, and Shedrick, pretty good foundation. Like, I think that's probably a tournament team. So while we're probably selling the overall Terry regime, I don't know if I'm like all the way selling a blow up calamity in year one.
That's if Mitchell comes back, who is in testing draft waters, going to absolutely demolish every single athletic test that they give him.
Yeah, it's true.
Which could really help his stock. We'll see how that pans out. Kai, what's your answer?
Am I worried about? I'm not sure they're going to make the dance. I'll go with that. I'm not sure they'll make the dance. Yeah, I think it's reasonable to be concerned. Yes.
Yep. Not a lock. We're all back in Chicago. Matthew's bachelor party is on the horizon.
Yeah.
We depart for that.
Holy cow, that's soon. Woo.
Next week,
8
baby.
days. We're headed to Charleston, South Carolina.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. We should out that we're going to be there, but you won't be able to find us. We're going to be
We absolutely should.
quiet and under the radar, Matt. No one's going to notice we're there. Obsolete.
Don't you have Pat Kelsey's number? I think that was kind of we had some early odds on 20-1 that we drunk text Pat Kelsey to meet up with us maybe Saturday after the boat excursion. But just a college basketball loose Hail Mary battalion to the off the court social scene of the week.
Good. I love it, Matt. You're always trying to tie things in. We love your connections, your transitions.
Exactly. Relevance.
We're going to see what we can do there. Yep. That is coming up. I don't know if we're going to have an episode next week, but at least now that we've got this off-season recap review train rolling, it gives us consistent content for a few weeks and we know what we're going to do. We don't have to scramble to come up with a pod idea every single week. So that is helpful. Let's get into Roots Roundup. Talking news and notes out there in the college basketball world, talking coaches. Montana State hired Matt Logie. I believe it was right after we finished our coaching grades hire, like 30 minutes after we hit log off and end stream. He spent 4 seasons at Point Loma, the Division II level. They just struck gold with Danny Sprinkle going Division II. Matt, makes a lot of sense to go back to that well, somebody with a lot of success at a lower level.
No, this is I say home run hire. Is that too repetitive? No, I love this hire. Sorry. Yeah. I do like the hire quite a bit though. I do. I
think I like it. What'd you give it? What's your letter grade? Let's update that since we.
Oh no. We see. What I'll say is I'll say the wrong letter grade. It doesn't jive with our letter grade from last episode. A B+, A-, an 89.75. Kai.
Yeah, that seems high. But I'm kind of like I'm stuck on Danny Sprinkle was like the perfect coach for Montana State. So I think the program I don't see getting better under Logie, even though he's had great success at his prior school. I think Sprinkle was just perfect for them, being an alum, being a former player.
Yeah, it's really tough when the guy, like you said, is alum. And when the alum leaves you, it's pretty disheartening. We're like, oh yeah, we're still a stepping stone program even for people that went here. That's a challenge. But yeah, Point Loma Nazarene, I believe the Idaho State current coach is also from Point Loma Nazarene. I could be making that up. But the timeline would line up.
There's a huge
for 4 years.
There's this huge like family of coaches that stems from like the Spokane, Eastern Washington area. Like Riley's tied in with that, Legan's connection to Hayford. So it's a very tangled web I was trying to weave kind of my assistant coaching research, but they're all mixed in with there. I feel like there's a lot of smart dudes that fall off that tree. So I'm betting on this being another one of those apples.
Yeah, confirmed. Brian Looney, Idaho State, was the Point Loma coach for 3 years before taking that job. And Matt, that hasn't gone that well. So I'm going to go B on this hire. Just B. Not going to go super strong on it.
I still like Looney and on Looney.
Yeah, well, we'll wait and see. A lot of progress to make there. Northwestern extended Chris Collins through 2028. Congrats. Was really on thin ice and then had a home run year. Not the only coach to do that, but he needed it, and credit to him. Deserves the extension after that impressive season for the Purple Cats. I did see Chris Jans got an extension right before we hopped on here. Not surprising. We kind of we're all in on that hire from last season into this year. Makes the tournament his first year. Congratulations, Mr. Jans. Recruiting, couple to mention here. Texas comes up right away. Ron Holland, who I was kind of beating the drum for, as at least Texas has him to rely on. He is gone. He is now exploring potential other options, possibly Arkansas, possibly professional routes. I know other schools have gotten involved, but those seem to be the early leaders in the clubhouse right now. Big time defender, high effort guy from Duncanville. Texas was fortunately able to offset that with some ads we'll discuss in the transfer area. But considering they just lost their other 5-star recruit to the professional ranks in New Zealand, it's not a home run start for Rodney Terry, Kai, where we thought, recruiting, at least bringing these talented freshmen would be a strength of them.
Yep. And just, circling back to the review, we have doubts about Terry in general as a head coach. No offense, the track record, it's not great. And we talked about that in our coaching episode. I have real doubts about his ability to improve upon Texas's normal program rating the last couple of years.
Yeah. And not having the same consistent lineup that was orchestrated and went through preseason stuff with Chris Beard. Could be a completely different story there. And then Georgia had a big couple of weeks here on the recruiting trail. Silas DeMary, formerly a USC commit, is headed there, 4-star shooting guard. And then just before this pod, Mr. Blue Kane, terrifically named Blue Kane, also headed to Georgia. They've gotten a couple big fish in the transfer portal as well. Mike White definitely raising the floor of that program compared to the depths that it had sunk into with Tom Crean prior to that. And then Kerry Booth, 4-star power forward, headed to Notre Dame. He was a Penn State commit, so nothing too surprising here. Following Micah Shrewsbury, as did his son, Braden Shrewsbury. Again, also not even remotely surprising that he's headed over there to South Bend. Class of 2024, a couple 5-stars. Carter Bryant, small forward, headed to Arizona. Isaiah Evans, also small forward, headed to your Duke Blue Devils. Never really been any doubt that Mr. Shire was going to bring in talent year after year. That seems to be the case. We're going to talk about him, though, in our ACC recap, whether we are all in or not on the Blue Devils long term. Kansas State, Marquette, Rutgers, BYU, Purdue all added a 4-star. I'll specifically highlight combo guard David Castillo headed to K-State because he's a top 30 prospect, like fringe 5-star. These other guys are like barely in the top 100 or right around there. But man, Jerome Tang, again, also will come up in the transfer section with a big ad there. Already starting to sow some seeds for future success in Manhattan. The little apple seeds. There's something there, right, Matt? He's Jerome Appleseed.
Yeah. Sowing little apple seeds, growing the trees that will bear fruit for the man. I don't know. Yeah, you're right. You got it, Jim. Keep it going.
There's something going on. Yeah, if it was worth highlighting. But yeah, Royce Parham, Marquette, Lathan Somerville to Rutgers, Isaac Davis to BYU, and Raleigh Burgess to Purdue. Just want to give them their names, just shout them out, just in case they're listeners. They want to hear their own names going through the recruitment process. All right, let's talk transfers. These have much more immediate impact coming up this season. We're not going to spend a ton of time on these because the ACC thing could take a while because we are long-winded. But we're starting with Texas, Kai, right back to the review. Max Asmus, Caden Shedrick gives them that inside-outside bookends to the lineup, the scorer, a defender. What say you about these ads for Texas to go with Hunter and Disu?
Asmus home run. By the way, I like this because I'm still in kind of my cocoon post basketball season. So I have not actually realized that all these guys are at these new spots. This is fun for me as well, learning right now. I knew Asmus though. And yeah, obviously a home run. Shedrick, you know what? After this process of him going to several schools and just hearing certain things, I'm not sure it's going to work out too well for Texas.
Yeah. I mean, the guy got benched by Tony Bennett for certainly not on-court production because every single metric screamed his impact. So you have to wonder what's going on off the court there. We heard whispers that maybe it wasn't that strong in some of his meetings with schools, including our alma mater, Kai, a place he almost went and spurned. But you just have to take talent when you can get it, especially given how barren that roster is just in terms of players. So Ronnie Terry, good job here. Matt, I'm gonna kick Gonzaga to you because within a couple of hours, they added Graham Ike and Ryan Nemhard, the Mountain West preseason player of the year last year. Ike never got on the court due to injuries, and that has been a story of his career. That was not the first time he missed extended games with injuries. But then Ryan Nemhard, who I was just listening to the Field 68, and Jeff Borzello called him the best get of the transfer portal.
Oh, love it.
Yep. Yeah, I know Kai's a big Ryan Nemhard guy. Where do you land on the Zags now, Matthew? They're still going to suck defensively, right?
Yeah, Ike is like fun. Like the healthy Ike is fun on offense because he's a kind of the throwback, physical, bruising big. And you have to trust Few's ability to develop and optimize what he's going to bring. But defensively, man, he doesn't really offer much. He's really, Kai, he's got a credit card vertical, as I like to make fun of myself sometimes. That's my concern. I think we see the same issues we saw last year with this team.
Yeah, him moving his feet in space is going to be Drew Timme-esque, and they just still don't really have the shot blocker that they need. But he can score. He can really, really score in the paint, and they have now a tremendous point guard to help facilitate that offense. Jared Bynum is headed to Stanford, Tyler Perry to Kansas State, Posh Alexander to Butler, Aaron Estrada to Alabama. This is the high-level point guard ads section of the outline here. Kai, which one of these jumps out to you most of that group of four as being super impactful? I will also throw in Stephen Ashworth to Creighton.
Yeah, you will. That's right. Kai, go ahead.
Boy, Posh Alexander to Butler is a weird fit, in my opinion. That's really strange. I'm surprised he transferred in conference. Sure, he's great. I think he's a really good player. Estrada, we've seen this movie before in power ranks. I'm surprised Alabama went for him. He's a great player. He won Colonial Player of the Year, I think 2 years in a row. We know he can play at that level, but he was not that great at Oregon. Maybe he's gotten better. He probably has. I would not consider him to be like a top 5 get. But Tyler Perry, I think, is a fantastic fit. I think Jerome Tang's going to get the most out of him. I think we talked about his per 40 numbers a while back, but holy cow, if you think he scored a lot at North Texas, just wait until he's in a new system that actually plays at a faster pace than dead last in the entire country. He's going to be awesome.
Yeah, average 18 a game at that pace. It's ridiculous.
Incredible. Right.
Matt, wax poetic about Mr. Ashworth for me.
Yeah, Perry's the best of that bunch, Jim, but Ashworth is like the most impactful, or insert cliche, edgy, cute way to describe it. Yeah, I just think he's so good and so underrated at Utah State. And now to come in and get the keys, or a set of keys to the Creighton offense. Defensively, I think, we'll see what happens there. But I think that team is just built so well defensively around him. That's not going to be a major issue. Same thing with Max Asmus, right? That's kind of the issue with him, is can he guard at the Texas level? But you put him next to Tyrese Hunter, it certainly looks a lot more rosy, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, they had a competent defense with 5'8" Marquise Noel. I think they can handle it with a guy who played for Grant McCasland in that scheme for a couple.
And Perry can actually guard. Yeah, Perry's like a legit defender too.
Kai, we'll do this. How many points do you think Perry averaged per 100 possessions? Not per 40 minutes, per 100 possessions. So kind of normalizing for pace.
Last year?
Yeah.
It was like 28.
34 per 100 possessions. The man scores. He gets buckets. He makes really tough shots. He's clutch late in games. That's been over and over. That's been his thing. I'm excited to see him in that system. I think it's going to end up being a really good fit. And he talked about speaking with Noel all the way through the process and how important that influence was on his decision. Cincinnati snuck a couple of impact players here. CJ Frederick from Kentucky/Iowa, Seamus Okocious from Butler. Matt, you've loved the Okocious for years. Do you see this as Big 12 caliber ads as Cincinnati makes that transition to a higher level league?
Yeah, I do. I think Lush Koshish, my guy, is sort of underrated as like a creator playmaker. He's not just like a standstill shooter. Yeah, I think he's a starter, Big 12 caliber. I do. You got to have like talent around him. He's not going to be a guy that you're going to, hang your hat on as a primary dude. But no, he's good. I think he's very, very real, and was sort of another one of those guys where you're getting sort of maybe an undervalued player who was part of that situation last season. And I think their true value is probably best found in a new setting.
Staying in the Big 12, Kai, Oklahoma adds John Hughley from Pitt. Kind of got relegated to nothingness this year, especially due to injury, and then just the style of that team. Then Javen McCollum, the old jitterbug point guard from Siena, maybe a little more off the radar ads for an Oklahoma team that really needed bodies. That roster was dire when I was looking at it in our ultimate master sheet. What do you think about this Big 12 squad?
Not great. I don't love Hughley. I don't love because he fell out of favor at Pitt. Maybe a change of scenery does him some good, but he was on the Pitt team that was really, really bad 2 years ago. He's their best player. So he's not a winner, in my opinion. McCollum, fantastic at Siena. He's a really good player. I'm not sure he's a Big 12 guy. I have my doubts about that one. So Oklahoma probably stays near the bottom for me in the Big 12.
Yep, especially as they add more and more talent around the rest of that league. A couple other schools that added multiple high-level pieces, maybe starter caliber. Oregon with Karia Okendo from Georgia, Devin Cambridge from Arizona State. His brother Desmond has finally exhausted his eligibility, but Devin headed there. Two guys that just can't really shoot. The spacing on that team is going to be horrific. Again, I'm not super enthused about him. But Matt, UNC, filling in the space between RJ Davis and Armando Bacot with Cormac Ryan from Notre Dame, Harrison Ingram from Stanford. What do you think here? I mean, Ingram, it's like, okay, he's getting out of Jared Haas, but he's going to North Carolina, a team that I don't really say maximizes role guys. What are your thoughts on the Heels, your arch rivals in the Tobacco Road area?
I think RJ Davis being there makes a lot of people look better than they probably are. If I'm a UNC fan, though, it feels like the upside is top 10 team, but there's just such a low floor with this roster, the way it's being reconstructed. I think this is a better team than last season, but not markedly better. And it kind of feels like the way this train's headed, Kai, at UNC, and we'll talk about this later. It feels like we're just trying to patch holes together. And I feel like as UNC, you want to really be gearing some talent momentum, and there's no momentous wave of dudes coming through here.
Ingram's totally overrated. So yeah.
I loved him out of high school, though, man. I really did. Maybe he's got a little renaissance in him.
Hey,
I don't know.
Maybe getting out of Stanford helps because he was not very good when I watched him in person.
Yeah, but we're gonna get to the UNC lack of player development down in the ACC recap section, and I am not going to be super friendly to Mr. Davis in that regard. I love Arterio Morris to Kansas. I thought when he came off the bench for Texas, he showed a lot of spark and juice and just kind of I can go get a bucket kind of style. Next to DeJuan Harris, I think that makes sense. Morris won't be responsible for a ton of playmaking because that's just Harris's go-to role. Kansas still has some questions to fill in. They got Nick Timberlake to be the wing shooter, but can he defend at that level? True center, I don't know. They're in the hunt for Hunter Dickinson. Matt, where do you have Kansas, generally speaking, nationally? I'm not asking you for a hard ranking, but how do you feel about them?
I have a little sticky note with potential future ads question mark. It's very hard to read, scribbled sort of gibberish. I don't have good handwriting. Kansas, the top of the list, 22-1. I think this roster is really, really well constructed. Just another great piece for Celt to add with that backcourt. Elmarco Jackson might be my favorite freshman of the entire cycle. Spoiler. I think he's that good. I know Celt kind of tends to have success more with older guards more consistently. So maybe it's a big step up, but I like that roster a lot. And I like Timberlake more than most people do. I'm pretty in on Kansas next season. That's my tip of the cap, Kai.
The Morris one was big for me. I was kind of waiting to see if they get a little more creation on the perimeter and experienced creation. And at least he's played in the Big 12. He's got something going there. Penn State added a bunch of potential starters. Puff Johnson from North Carolina, Zach Hicks from Temple, who I quietly really, really like as a shooter and getting out of the weird Temple ecosystem they had last year. Then Qudus Wahab from Maryland / Georgetown / Maryland / Georgetown, played for both. Just another a center for Mike Rhodes, and he's slowly but surely filling out that roster for the Nittanies. I have a feeling Matt's going to be high on them next year. That's just kind of a tradition of our Mateo. Kai, I'm going to throw a few at you. You pick out which one you want to discuss. All kind of starting caliber guys at the high major level, maybe not all conference talents, but Severe Wheeler to Washington, Hakeem Hart to Villanova, joining TJ Bamba, discussed last episode. Darion Williams, Texas Tech, Jaden Nunn from VCU to Baylor, Tyree Samuel to Florida, Avery Anderson to TCU. Any of those, are you like, oh, that makes a real needle move for me on that team?
Man, I'm not sure there's big needle movers here. Wheeler's going to be exactly what you think at Washington. You're going to forget about him. You're going to forget that he plays for Washington. I think Jaden Nunn, though, is probably the best out of that group in terms of ads. I think he can fully emerge into one of those awesome Baylor guards under the tutelage of Drew, and he was already pretty darn talented to begin with. So that's a fantastic ad. And then as far as role goes, Tyree Samuel's a pretty good role filler on just about any team. So Florida did a good job there. Just getting a nice rotational piece.
Yeah, God's provenly productive. Avery Anderson's kind of the same way. It's like been productive in a high major league. Adam, he's going to start. It gives you something. Matt, anything in there, or do you want to get into the other ones I listed here? Robbie Barron to Virginia Tech probably starts up front for them. Glenn Taylor, who I sneaky like, shout out to the Peyton Heads, Oregon State over to St. John's. I was so mean to St. John's last episode. I will at least say I like Glenn Taylor coming over there. Quincy Guerrier to Illinois. Anything, Matt, from either that prior group or those additional ones that you want to discuss, highlight?
Kai, aren't you a Guerrier apologist like myself? Are we still in that same? Are you still with me, or have you abandoned ship?
I'm off the bandwagon on Guerrier.
I'm still
off the bandwagon. I was
still in.
So once I saw him in person, once I saw him in Portland, I was like, oh, he's just really not that good. He should be good. He looks like he should be good for sure. I mean, my God, he's built. But yeah, no thanks. It's funny that Robbie Barron, by the way, is going to Vermont Tech. It's like, let's get Basili 2.0 in here. Like, there's still no defense, just stretch guy. Whatever. He's okay.
Matt, doesn't it bother you that Guerrier, who was, I think, fairly good at Syracuse, being a beast inside, dominated the glass, shot more threes for 2 straight years at Oregon than twos? Like, why did he just become like, oh, look at me, look what I can do. I can shoot threes.
That Oregon team last year was like the biggest collection of misfit parts. Like, I would be buying stock in all those roster remnant defectors.
But those guys are going to Illinois, which was the exact same thing. Like a jumble of guys that didn't like playing together.
Yeah, I still trust Underwood. I wouldn't give last year like a fail. I mean, I think it was mostly good, just with some turbulence, and maybe they overdid the transfer portal. I'm still betting big on him, Guerrier. He's going to be healthy, I think. Hakeem Hart to Nova, I think a quiet, huge get. Really efficient. like know your role, all-star, great defender. He's played point, he's played off the ball. I think he's just been a consummate veteran throughout his entire collegiate career. Great kid, very Nova-ish type signing there.
Yeah, I love the heart. The heart ad. Still Gary, and watching that Illinois team run half court offense last year was like really, really nauseating.
Yeah, it started like that.
I'm a little concerned there. All right, Kai, now you get to go on your Mizzou pedestal talking Caleb Grill, big time shooter from Iowa State, who was unceremoniously booted from the team late in the year. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to let you talk Jesus Carolero just because you're a Mizzou guy.
Well, yeah, the Grill thing, I'm hoping for the best, Jim. I think he's a good player on the floor. He's surprisingly athletic. He can shoot. The getting kicked off the team thing is a real negative for me, obviously, especially from a coach that loved him. Literally, like Otzelberger, huge fan of his. So we'll see. Carolero, look, not my first choice. I want a big guy that can actually defend, but Carolero has played in the Princeton offense. He is a very, very, very good passer for a big man. He's very skilled. He just needs to stay healthy. He has not been healthy very much over his career. When healthy, he's pretty good. Is he SEC caliber? If he was probably going to a different school, I would probably not be talking about him in such a positive light. But when I previewed Campbell a couple of years ago, I really, really liked his tape.
Yeah, he's not big enough, athletic enough, can't shoot. I don't. If he's playing more than 10 minutes a game, I'm concerned about Mizzou's efforts in the paint.
It's a weird get.
Yeah, we'll see. They're still floating out there for a couple bigs. Please give us Jimmy Bell, Kai. That's all I want. Just give me a giant guy that eats space.
We're begging for Jimmy Bell.
I like that.
Yeah, that's where we're
at. I like Bell. Bell's solid. I mean,
he's just a rebounder and takes up
I was
space.
bummed that the Tigers were not on the list of people who reached out to Aziz Bandago from Utah Valley. Thought that would be a nice little fit. But all right, let's move on. Let's talk board bet recap. That's it for the roundup. No more news. We're recapping board bets, which again, this is kind of going to be just a Matt victory lap and honestly kind of a Kai victory lap too. It's mostly Dunk on Jim Central. Tried to order these in terms of like conference and power level leagues. But we're recapping everything that I think we settled on in the preseason. If we forgot something, feel free to yell at us. Wake Forest, Matt, that's where we're starting. Over under 70 in terms of their final KenPom rank. I took under, you took over. Kai abstained. Kai sat this one out. They were 66th with like a week left in the regular season. They tanked it at the end, finished 86th. You win, start off 1-0. Mr. Cox, congratulations.
Yeah, this is a scummy win for me. Yeah, when it's going well, the variance is going your way. You're kind of one of those hot streaks.
The next one's even scummier.
This one's bad. The next two are so bad. Oh, God, Georgia Tech. Oh, goodness. Oh.
I can't believe you got this one right with Georgia Tech. They started 1-12 in the ACC, and you had over 5.5 ACC wins. They won 5 of their final 7 to finish on 6. Jim and Kai lose. Matt, you are running hot to start board bets here.
Holy cow.
Jim, they were due some shooting regression. Every post-game interview, pastor would be like, I swear we're a good shooting team. It's like, Josh, there's no way you're a good shooting team. And they actually got hot and made shots like the last 4 games of the year, and they scummed their way to a 6-14 record and a winner for Matthew Cox.
Just enough to get him fired still. You threaded the needle of him getting fired, but also winning your board bet. Kai, I think this is a right side, wrong
it was the right side. Make that wager again 10 times out of 10, Jim.
Absolutely. 1-12. They were 1-12. Speaking of right side, Kai, you were on the right side of history with Louisville.
Yeah.
We somehow set an over-under of 100.5 for Louisville. They finished 290th. Matt and Jim take a lap. This is kind of naked lap territory. Kai, you can hold this over our heads for a while.
I put 5 units on that one. You're darn right. And whatever their over under is this year, I'll take the over.
Yeah, I think we'll get into it a little more, the state of Louisville in the ACC recap. So I'm not going to step on toes, but I don't think any of us are super optimistic about them.
Nobody will be.
Switching to Big East, DePaul versus Georgetown, final Big East finish. This one's obviously easier to do because they have a true double round robin. Matt and Kai win with the 3-17 DePaul record.
How about our demons?
Georgetown 2-18. God, our board bets are depressing. We only got a terrible team.
Playing possessed, baby.
It was more of a we don't believe in Patrick Ewing thing, I believe, Matthew.
DePaul started off 3-5, and then they lost their last 12 games. Still enough to outlast the Fighting Patrick Ewings and that 2-18 record.
Yeah, my new Ewing theory is don't bet on them, you idiot. That's kind of what I'm going with. But they're going to be competent now with Ed Cooley taking over. Big time upgrade at coach after a horrendous saga under Mr. Ewing. Next up, we've got Alabama versus Gonzaga. Better defensive ranking in terms of adjusted defense on KenPom. I abstained. Kai said Gonzaga. Matt said Alabama. Bama finished third. Gonzaga 73rd. This was another big win for old Matthias.
Yeah.
Kai, don't make this bet again next year. That's all I'm going to say. Don't bet on Gonzaga's defense again next year.
I was stubborn when making this board bet, and I paid for it.
I think Alabama was my best overall take. Thank you. It's my best overall take of the offseason. I really put chips on Alabama, and they delivered. So nice job, Nate Oatsy.
Good job.
Yep. You go back through the SEC preview, and Matt had some strong quotes about the potential for that Tide team. And though they came up short in the NCAA tournament again, starting to be a trend a little bit there. And the off-court issues, they were still far and away better than their expectations. Number 1 overall seed in the NCAA tournament. All right, higher Big 12 finish. TCU versus Texas Tech. I'm just happy because I won something. This is my first board bet win. We're over halfway through the list. TCU 9-9, finished ahead of Texas Tech 5-13.
Yeah, asterisks.
Kai, I'm gonna say this, Kai. Had you known what you now know about Mark Adams, you wouldn't have made this bet. We didn't know that he was a weirdo off the court. We just thought he was a defensive genius at that point.
Well, not only that, AMAC missed a lot of games, Matthew.
So don't pull the injury card.
Mike Miles missed six.
No, you have no injury. You have no injury rope here in the TCU argument. Absolutely none. This was a never good roster. Yeah, they had injuries. This is a bad bet by you. Look yourself in the mirror, accept it, and move forward. Plenty of new grass of opportunities this season.
It wasn't a great
bad
bet
play by you.
It wasn't. I definitely
bad by you.
Overestimated Tech's abilities, but I mean, AMAC was probably their best player down the stretch, so I think there's a little bit of injury.
Because they weren't any good. Oh.
With apologies to what's his name? That guy was actually a killer. Never mind, the point guard. Forgot his name.
Davian Harmon was fantastic.
Yes,
I will say this: AMAC missed 8 Big 12 games. Mike Miles missed 5. So
he missed 5 Big 12 games.
Yeah, he missed 5 because that knee sprain that I was sure was an ACL tear.
Yeah.
But Lampkin was hurt. TCU was hurt all year.
You guys won that one. Oh, stop it.
Next, Utah. Final KenPom rank over under 70th. Kai was saying over. They're going to be worse than that. Jim and Matt said under, better than that. They finished 75th. Kai, by the hair of your chinny chin, cut thinly, you come with a victory there. How about that?
I love Craig Smith too, guys. You just got to realize when the roster isn't good. I love Craig. This is fun.
They were 10-5. They were 10-5, 17-9, 52nd in KenPom on Valentine's Day, and then lost 6 straight in this regular season. So pretty bad fall from grace there late.
Yeah. Gabe Madsen getting hurt killed him.
Yeah. Got to 40th in KenPom twice. They were 39th in mid-December. They were 40th in late January. And they tumbled, man. I'm telling you, if you go through some of these board bets, guys, I had forks. The way we refer to forks. Yeah. The late game. Yeah, the late games did not pan out as one would hope. Auburn finishing the SEC over under 5.5. Under says top 5 finish for Kai. Jim and Matt said over 5.5, finish 6th or worse. Well, I'll tell you what, Matt, we did not say over 5.5 because of Vandy and Mizzou finishing ahead of Auburn, but that was the case. That was what got us a board bet victory here. Kai, you'll take this one because it meant your Tigers played well.
Yeah, it was a good line. They finished 5th in KenPom, Auburn in the SEC. So a good line. I tipped the cap. I'd probably take this bet again. Yeah,
and obviously the imbalance schedules is a part of this, and maybe that's why we should stick to KenPom rank on teams like that. So we'll do that in the future. All right, now we go to mid-major, a couple mid-major bets where Matt just absolutely kicked my ass. Fordham, final rank, over under 200. They finished 137th. Maddie, you said under, better, good call. Here's my takeaway from this. I'm concerned about Villanova because my whole premise on this bet was, they only had Kyle Neptune for a year. He's gone. But it seems like Ergo was the main facilitator behind this surge in Fordham. And it wasn't Neptune. And now Villanova's got this 37-year-old head coach who was, truth be told, not that great last year. And we'll see where things go there. But that's my biggest takeaway from this loss, Matt, is I'm losing on Fordham makes me concerned about Nova.
I partially agree. I still think Neptune's very good. Khalid Moore was like a huge monster from Georgia Tech that Fordham had no business getting. I think he kind of matters too. So that was a sneaky, huge personnel boost they had
Yeah,
last
and
year.
I think that was part of your preseason take, was that he would be that awesome, and I was skeptical. So tip of the cap to you, and then another blowout victory for both of you against me. Fresno State versus Nevada, KenPom rank. Whew,
Wow.
Fresno 143rd, Nevada
I
62nd.
Kai was a pack boy with me. How fun!
I can't remember. I don't
How
remember
fun.
making this bet. That's great.
Well,
Yeah, I'm not a
I don't
believer
know
in
if
Fresno,
you
I guess.
don't know if you abstained or not, but
Yeah.
I think I recorded it as you were on the Nevada side, so I'm going to give you the win.
I definitely like Nevada better than Fresno preseason. It's
Yeah.
easy to say now, but I think that's true. Yes.
Yeah, one team made the NCAA tournament, one team went like 4-14 in their league. So yeah, gonna take one more L there. Well done, boys. Well done.
Thank you.
Love board
Matt
bets.
Matt went like 7-2 or something like that, and I think I went like 2-8. So congratulations,
bad
Matt.
boys
I
up.
hope to rally better next preseason. Got to come with sharper takes on those preseason episodes.
Yeah, the challenge with winning, Jim, is that it just gets harder, and you have to stay hungrier to maintain. Like just in this business, that's what's so challenging. So we're not going to dwell on this. We're not going to oversell. We're going to go forward. We're going to continue to trust the process, and I think you'll see results continue to sustain going forward. That's my official statement.
For how much crap Jim and I give Matt like very, very hard on his takes, this must feel so good for him to have 7-2 board bet record. Here's
the issue. He's
bursting with like crow right now, but he's trying
dashboard
to keep,
confessional lyrics coming through here, Kyle.
Yes.
The problem was I checked like all these teams. I didn't actually like make money betting or fading these teams in the vein of the board bets.
Yeah.
Hey, you made the takes against me.
Currency.
Yeah. Go earn yourself some funds. Next time you have these strong opinions, go make money. All right, let's talk ACC now. We're going to get into this little season recap. This is going to be something we're doing going forward on at least the top 6 leagues. Maybe we'll dive into like a combined Mountain West WCC or something after. I'm not sure the A10 warrants one of these because they were horrific, and it would just be an episode of bullying. But hey, the ACC wasn't that great either last year. Some general facts on the conference. No top 15 KenPom teams. Only one Sweet 16 squad. That was Miami. They did make the Final Four. Obviously, worth noting that. Some nerdy facts from a KenPom tracker I use, Final Ranks. If you're going by the average KenPom finish since 2010 for all these teams, only 3 were above their average this year. That would be Wake Forest, NC State, and Miami. And all of those were only barely so. Miami was the best performer of the league consistently. Collectively, they were almost 5 points worse in efficiency margin on average than normal. It was the worst average ranking for the league since 2010 for KenPom, and 6 programs had their worst or second worst year since 2010. Duke, Georgia Tech, Syracuse, Notre Dame, Florida State, Louisville, all not bad. Crazy. Duke finished 18th, best KenPom finish of the conference, and still second worst KenPom year since 2010.
So the best team finished 18th in KenPom. I mean, it's a down year. And I looked back at my power ratings, actually. Only 5 teams improved for me for my preseason rank to final rank, which I think it's pretty bad. I don't think I pegged them right, or every single team right. I just think teams are mostly poor this year.
Matt, where do you settle on the ACC? I know everybody tried to paint such a huge narrative that, oh, you think the ACC was bad? They have a Final Four team, but like no one else made the Sweet 16. And even if you're not doing conclusions based on NCAA tournament, had a bad quad 1, quad 2 record collectively as a conference. I know we reiterated that on some of the earlier pod episodes, and it just felt down to me.
Yeah, I mean, they're getting passed up by Big 12, SEC, and a lot of the coaching stuff, and just kind of been stuck in the mud. It's funny, my power ratings didn't actually show them a whole lot worse than the year before, but just fundamentally the last 2 seasons have kind of charted the new normal for this conference. I mean, there's basically 2 good teams in this league last season. I think Duke was good, stubbornly. Yeah. And I think Miami was actually good. I think Miami made people, the ACC helped people miss Miami in the are they real -o-meter, I guess. They're okay. Because Miami does this thing where they play kind of down to competition. Like they played like the Notre Dames and Boston Colleges and Georgia Tech's way closer than people thought. And then they actually played well, like against Duke and against most of the good teams they played. And I think that's why you saw them. That's why the tournament run didn't feel as fluky to me. Like I think they kind of actually had that switch, and the same thing was sort of the case last season too.
Yeah, let's start going team by team with Miami. We're going to start atop because they had the 1 seed in the conference tournament. They shared the regular season title. They were the banner program for the league this year. And to your point, Matt, they weren't good as a big favorite this year. As a favorite of 10 points or more, they were 3-7 against the spread, just not good in that situation. But in all other games, 19-8 against the spread. I know we cited some of that stuff through the NCAA tournament run when they were like a short dog or a short favorite or a dog. They were fantastic. And I think that's the kind of thing that masks how good you were and is hard to interpret when you're looking at some of the KenPom stuff. Kai, how did you feel about Miami this year? I know we've said over and over, Norshad Omir, we owe you an apology. You were much better than we expected. Wooga Poplar, also in our preseason episode, we were brutal too, and he was actually good.
He improved a lot. He's going to be an NBA player apparently someday. Yeah, he really improved. So I think what happened to Miami in terms of my perception of this team is we thought they were going to be really good in 19 and in 20. And we finally get up in 21. We were like, all right, this is the new normal. We ignored the injuries and we were like, all right, not a great program anymore. In the last 2 years, they basically played to how they played back in Larinaga's earlier days in 16, 17, 18 with this program. So he's basically just getting back to where he should be. He's a great coach. It shouldn't be surprising. But I do kind of agree with your point of it was sneaky hard to peg how good Miami was this season because their non-conference schedule, they won most of their games, but they weren't against great teams or, they beat Rutgers, but it was at home. There wasn't enough to prove that, oh, this is emphatically a great team. And also Maryland by 18. So I don't think they were as good as people think they are, Matt, at the end of the year, but clearly one of the better ACC teams. And I would say a good team overall.
Yeah, I just think they're very good. Larinaga is a great coach, and people forgot that during those 2 seasons. I mean, the game against Brown is the one that sticks out to me. They almost lost at home. Cornell. Almost lost at home to Cornell. Final was 107-105. Like
in regulation,
it was one of those
105 regulation.
Yeah. And so I think there was those moments, and they lost to Georgia Tech on January 4th, and they lost to there was just like those, okay, Miami's not all the way. Like they kind of pinched us at the right times all season where we didn't ever fully take them seriously, but really they were just maybe minor blemishes and always probably better than we thought.
Yeah, they awesome backcourt. Russ was pointing out in the chat, like they have isolation shot creators, stuff that kind of plays up in the postseason, I think becomes more and more important.
Definitely.
The better and more fine-tuned game plans get, they were a team that was able to sustain. And that a team that could not on the other end of the spectrum and really faded late would be Virginia, the other team that tied atop the regular season in the ACC. Got a pretty nice seed in the NCAA tournament, ended up collapsing against Furman, which, Matt, was kind of a microcosm of their season. Really strong for a while, looked good early, and then just could not finish. Bad turnover late by Kihei Clark. They dropped from 14th to 34th after Valentine's Day. Just an encapsulation of how much worse they got. And I think it was just the talent level was never that high. That's the way I felt about it. The preseason, listen to our episode, we're like, hey, the continuity is going to matter on defense. And it did somewhat, but the offense just never got there.
Yeah, I mean, since the title, the talent crop has been slightly watered down. And I think people forgot like how much Bennett vaulted the expectation of this program. And so it's like, 25-8, first round loss to Furman. Yeah, it was a disappointing season, but man, like that's kind of where we are. That's where we are with Bennett and this program. I think people need to kind of reset themselves. This is not like a perennial top 10 program. It really isn't. It's, it's fringe top 20, top 25 on a year-to-year basis. They're going to be grasping for straws to get consistent talent and depth. They're going to be hurt more by the transfer bonanza that's crushing college basketball with how much I think Bennett values continuity and teaching within his system and the year-to-year stuff that I think really helped those elite teams of prior years. So I think they're up against it in the new normal. I really do. Bennett's too good of a coach to like fall off the map, but I think this is the sort of range that we should shift our expectations to with this team, Kai.
Yeah, I was kind of going to say that too. Hey, they finished 25th in defense. Preseason, weren't they like 1 or 2? And offense was supposed to be really good.
They're 5th in KenPom to start. Yeah.
KenPom ratings, we were like, this is too high. And I kind of agree with the transfer portal aspect. It seems like going forward, they're going to have a tough time hanging because nobody wants to come and play in this style. I think it's going to be pretty tough to get these guys to want to commit to that. Also, academically, pretty good school. I'm sure they haven't gone the way of, say, Duke, which makes exceptions for teams. They were top 10 program for 6 years in a row. I think it has the potential to get back there, but with the new normals, quote unquote, I do think we're looking at like 20 from now on.
Yeah, the stat I called out in the preseason pod was that their 3-point percentage defense just wasn't elite anymore, and it was something that they had been able to consistently manipulate and be like top 10, top 20, top 30, like year after year. And now 3 straight years they've been outside the top 170 in 3-point percentage defense. They just don't have the same length, bothersome going on in the perimeter, and maybe Kihei Clark leaving will help that. You know, you don't have a 5'9" point guard that doesn't bother a single shooter anymore, but that is something that is harder to sustain, and it is kind of caught up with them of late, and the offensive talent just really has not been there. All right, Matt, we arrive at your Duke Blue Devils, who you were super high on in the preseason, and it looked like you were going to end up right with the way they went through the ACC tournament. Mark Mitchell's injury certainly warrants mention with the coming up short in the NCAA tournament, but they got bullied by Tennessee, just weren't able to hold up there. On a quote from our preseason podcast, Kai says, I think Filipowski is going to be their best freshman. Matt, immediately, he's going to be their worst freshman.
Come on.
Well, Matt, we do have to humble you a little bit after those big wins in the board bets. Kyle Filipowski, pretty good player.
Yeah, very good player. Kai and Russ and myself discussed this. Myself and Russ were wrong. Many of the Duke insiders were wrong. We got some bad information out of Camp. Well, actually, accurate information that just turned out to grow stale, as Filipowski got a lot better late in the offseason, and lo and behold, he was the anchor for that team while they struggled to start the year. The light bulb flicked on late. You can caveat that with it was in the ACC. Okay, fine. I thought they were pretty dominant though against NC State, against Miami in the ACC tournament, against Virginia, Pitt, and then, the first round against Oral Roberts. There are certainly moments. It just wasn't ever all put together. I think the upside is still there with Shire, big picture. But the consistency, the ability to kind of hit that top gear remains to be seen. But I grew more encouraged, Kai, as the year went on. I really am. Maybe I'm just a Shire apologist at this point after calling him better than Billy Donovan. But that said, I do think he is a good coach and still somewhat how want to say, he is learning, and I think the improvements were very clear throughout the year. So I'm encouraged long term.
This will be a top 3 team next year and should be strong going forward. Am I going to power rate them top 3? I'm thinking probably not. I'm not sure I totally buy into Shire quite yet, Jim. From a power rating perspective, I think they're going to be really overrated in markets, and it's going to be kind of tough to suss out. I would like to get a future on them, but all the good numbers are kind of taken right now, so I might just wait.
Yeah, I took an okay number before Filipowski came back, and now the market's even off from there. But Matt, we might think about them differently if Norchad Omier doesn't hurt his ankle immediately against Miami in the ACC semifinal.
In the ACC tournament game, yeah, fair.
Duke was only up 2 with 5 minutes left. Like, it was a very close game against a team missing the only big guy that matters on that roster. I don't know if that run was quite as dominant as we want to paint it to be. The Pitt game was obviously, of course, just a total demolition. But I'm still questioning Shire as a top shelf X and O guy as well. I think he got better as the year went on, but I think a lot of what we're going to say about him, we said about Hubert Davis last offseason, and that did not continue to improve. So we'll see where they go, but the talent level is so ridiculously high next year. I'm still in on them, as, like Kai said, being top 3, top 5 for sure.
Duke was 7th in the ACC offensively last year. Like, yikes. Can't happen.
Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah. No, it was weird.
Roach missing time didn't help there. And Proctor
really
turned
a lot.
Proctor got
turned the ball a lot. And Proctor getting better was like, okay, this is a new team. That's the whole Duke 2024 outlook starts and ends with Proctor being an All-American, which I think he will be.
Yeah, he had a couple shots against Tennessee, like spinning step back through the legs.
Yeah,
he jumper. It was like, whoa, that's professional. Like, okay. Unfortunately, those are like 3 of the 5 baskets they hit the entire second half. All right, now we've got to really eat some crow here, fellas, because Pitt was a whole lot better than we gave him credit for. Entire preseason pod, we basically just kind of dumped on Capel and the fact that they had never finished higher than 12th. Well, they did this year. They actually had a chance at sharing the conference title, but they did gag a little bit down the stretch, lost at Notre Dame, lost at Miami, and then, of course, got thoroughly blown out by Duke in the ACC tournament. Did win 2 games in the NCAA tournament, made the round of 32 from the play-in spot. Kind of a fun team, was able to spread the ball out or spread the court out with a lot of shooting. Kai, do we fully apologize to Mr. Capel and acknowledge that he is good now, or is this closer to a sort of fluke with one of the most experienced teams in the country and a ton of shooting?
I think it's more the latter. They were like the 5th best ATS team in the country, which is usually an indication of overachieving and usually coaching, but I don't think so. I mean, they finished like 59th in KenPom, not that much higher than the other Pitt teams. They just happen to win 8 more games in the conference this season than they have in the past under Capel. I think it's a combination of the ACC being down. Pitt's offense was objectively good, so it certainly helps to have a good offense, and that is a lot of talent and experience. So I'm not ready to crown Capel yet as a good or competent coach, but it was much better than I expected.
He's not Billy Donovan.
Yeah, props to him for
insistent on that.
Yeah, I think it was a 1 year, kind of a one-hit wonder, but I think props to Capel for adapting to his roster. Hewley has the injury and I think mental health stuff, and he allowed the guards to be the fulcrum of the team, and they were terrific all season. So another one of those examples where a guy was like in a put up or shut up type season, and he did just enough, if not, a pretty hefty enough to secure his spot there. So nice job, Jeff.
Yeah. I liked watching them this year. Like the way they spread things out. They had a lot of different guards that could get into gaps and make plays. Hinson's a tough matchup for people. We'll see if he's able to continue to sustain it, because like I said, a lot of those guards were 5th year and are gone. It's going to be maybe tougher to repeat that success going forward. All right, next up, NC State. Another one that I was low on heading into the year. I didn't understand how the defense would get better. Well, it got better because no one made threes against them. The number 1 3-point percentage defense in the league. I called it a shadow board bet against Jeff Goodman, the preseason one. I said Wake Forest for NC State. Mr. Goodman, you don't listen, but you won with your ranking NC State higher. Congratulations to him. Matt, I mean, they just had 2 awesome dynamic guard creators. Russ said it about Miami. You have guys that can win in ISO situations in a league that the defenses aren't very good. That works for Miami. It also worked for NC State, and the defense was barely good enough. So Wolfpack made the tournament. Successful year for Mr. Keats.
Yeah, kind of an inverse of Miami for me, at least anecdotally, like a team that does they beat the doors off some like mid-majors early. Like the way they beat Furman was like oh wow, this team might have a gear. And competed against Kansas and beat Dayton when we thought Dayton was kind of good. So yeah, it's an inconsistent team, but I think a team with a high ceiling because of those guards. It's very Miami without the coaching and just program stability foundation is what NC State is to me at this point.
I was going to kind of compare it to Miami because Keats was a guy that we thought was a great hire at the time for NC State, and we were a pretty big believer in him coming from Wilmington. And he had 3 pretty good years at NC State to start off. Then the 2 after that were brutal and played severely below our expectations. And I kind of gave up on him this past season and kind of put them at the same level. And he exceeded those expectations. He got back to his level. Maybe that's having an NBA guy in Turk Smith. Maybe he won't repeat that again, especially with the defense still wasn't good. So it's still probably, this is what we expect from Keats going forward. Good enough to not get fired, but not fantastic.
He's kind of like...
I'll say this. He went heavy on the bigs this offseason, Jim. I think he recognizes I'm tired of not having a good interior defense. He's just like sick of it at this point. So I like that what he's done.
Yeah, the guard play might not be quite at the same level if Turk goes pro and Joyner's gone. I mean, I know he added some guys, Jaden Taylor, but he's just not quite at the same level. Keats is kind of on his way to like a almost Ed Cooley-esque tenure where finished is like in the 40s, and maybe he'll have one-off year where like, whoa, this team really excels, but hasn't had like a top shelf team, hasn't had a top 35 KenPom team, hasn't had a top 40 team yet, and mix in one bad year here and there where they kind of fall down the standings. Feels similar to me, at least at this stage. Next up, Clemson, team that is probably bitter they didn't make the NCAA tournament given their league record, but unfortunately the ACC just wasn't that good this year, and some of those wins didn't quite mean as much. Struggled against a lot of inferior competition, some bad losses, but a relatively fun team to watch. Their bigs could shoot. PJ Hall and Hunter Tyson could really invert the floor. A lot of young guards, maybe inexperienced, not totally figured out in the backcourt. Brownell just kind of keeps on floating along, Kai, and it seems like that's going to be the indefinite future for the Tigers.
Yeah, he didn't outperform Ken Palm's preseason rank, but he certainly outperformed probably everybody else's. And I don't think many guys can take Clemson to 14-6 in the ACC, even in a down year. It's a tough place to win. I'm impressed. It's ridiculous they didn't make the tournament after they were 10-1 in the ACC and 18-4, but you can't lose to Loyola by 18 points. You just can't do that. And you lost South Carolina as well. That's your death knell. They were better than I expected. I think Brownell is a good coach, Matt.
Yeah, I think he's a very good coach. I'll go that far. Now you could argue he doesn't get high quality players in his program enough consistently. Part of the job. I get that schematically, though. If you just isolate that part of the coaching scoring rubric, very good. They had some major injuries down the stretch too. PJ Hall's never healthy, but their backcourt was kind of depleted. He probably needs a little more depth this season. I actually like their. I mean, it's just a double every year with Brownell. You know, always a little better than you think. Never the high upside, but just hitting doubles year after year.
Yeah, Kyle, you mentioned Loyola, South Carolina. That's a loss by 10 to Louisville late in the year.
Yeah,
Louisville was
that was awful. I mean, that kind of ruined the season. That was
lost to Boston College. Yeah, too many bad losses, man.
Yeah, some of the stuff that just kind of you couldn't write off one or two bad losses when there were 4 or 5. Like it's just a pattern at that point. It's a team that doesn't able to take care of business there. All right, at long last, going down the ACC standings, we have finally come to North Carolina. Preseason number 1 team for a lot of people, not for us. Number 1 in the ACC, though. We were all fairly even Matt was the Mr. Pro Duke was saying UNC is the favorite. Boy, they were bad. Really imploded. Just kind of the disease of me seemed to get to them. No shot selection quality at all. They didn't develop a bench. They somehow had more or fewer bench minutes than the prior season, despite bringing in good recruits. Kai, you're looking incredulous at that. Like, what are you doing? Develop a bench.
Hubert Davis is a terrible coach. You make the championship, and then the next season you're 15th in continuity. So basically, all your guys are back, and you're top 25 in experience. So you're old, and you get way worse. And you miss a tournament. It's incredible. And yeah, they played 4th least bench minutes in the country, and I know some of those guys in that bench are 4 and 5-star recruits. It's pretty much inexcusable. I don't know how you can defend Davis, especially if you're a UNC fan. It's becoming clearer by the day that the championship was a fluke. And think about if they would have lost that first round and then followed that performance up with this season, how we'd be thinking of Davis.
Yeah, a couple quotes that stand out big time to me were him being completely mind blown that Iowa State ran a 1-3-1. Like, I'll just never forget that.
Yeah, that's the one.
TJ Otzelberger's been playing that defense for years and years. And then Matthew from the preseason, this is the last quote I have of yours that's here as a slice of humble pie for you. I quote, Hubert Davis really proved to me that he has a good X and O mind on him during that tournament run. That is Matthew. I don't agree. Your thoughts?
7-2.
I retract that quote from the record. That's he was. Weren't they? I thought they were kind of good in the tournament, so maybe I was right for 2 games. They look kind of good. I don't know. I guess Brady Manick's a good piece to make your offense look fun and modern and maybe trick naive people like myself. But no, I'm with Kai. I'm kind of out on Hubert Davis, and I'm, as a Duke fan, the longer he stays there and kind of drags that out, the happier I'll be.
Yeah, I see like potential with the roster with the really good point guard, really good center, and they're kind of filling in some okay blanks in the middle there, but I don't know. It's probably just not going to look great. It's going to look really disjointed on the floor. And you look at it now, besides Ryan and Davis, there's not much shooting at all. So Kai, I think we're worried about the trajectory. Give me your year that they are performing their next coaching search.
I bet next year will be his last. Wow. 1 or 2 more years. Is he the worst coach in the ACC?
No, Kenny Payne.
Okay, besides Kenny Payne, who would you rank below Hubert besides Kenny Payne? I think I'm reading Hubert Davis.
I'm pretty skeptical of Autry. We'll see.
Okay, Autry. Besides the guys I haven't shown.
Yeah,
great call. Yeah, I think I'd put Davis 3rd to last, 2nd to
no. Prove me wrong, man. You can't be number 1 preseason and then miss the tournament. It's never happened before.
I mean, with RJ Davis and with Davis and Baycott, they're locked to be a top 40 team, right? But like the ceiling,
are they? They weren't even last year. They were 43rd.
Yeah, they weren't. They're not a top 40 team.
That's how crazy.
Okay,
that's how poor of a coach he is.
Yeah,
Anyways.
it was brutal year for UNC.
Valid point. Valid point.
Don't know that all the way
Message
swings
received.
back the other way. All right, Wake Forest, the team that I really went to bat for in the preseason. They got some fantastic individual breakout performances. Appleby went on the Alondis Williams train and just became a total star, but they didn't defend enough. They didn't have enough consistent perimeter scoring, and really no interior scoring at all. I would say underperformed my expectations, Matt, but kind of just, floated along with what everybody else thought they would be. How are you feeling about Forbes and this program right now?
Yeah, it was weird. After the breakthrough 2022 season, the roster just wasn't as in good of shape as we would have hoped to carry that momentum forth last year. You really didn't have a lot to work with last season, honestly. So it's hard to say last year was a letdown failure, in terms of how he performed relative to the on paper projections. But it's very close, but no cigar right now for Wake. I think they're going to be kind of on the wrong side of the bubble. Feels like that's their mean destiny going forward, Kai, just because the roster hasn't quite taken that true upper echelon power conference leap that I think you need to if you want to have a Wake that returns to again, this is not a program that has consistent high end, top 20 year over year success. So it's kind of a tough, drawing the line of success. Yeah, I guess it did for a little bit there with Chris Paul and stuff, but tough program.
I'm a believer in Forbes. It is a tough program, but I think it can be good. He needs to focus on getting defense in the portal. That's what really tanked for them this season. And his gets last year just didn't really jive with that mantra. It was, we're just going to take guys that can shoot or guys that can score without really giving much thought to the other end. So hopefully he realizes that. He's a pretty smart guy, and they kind of shore up that end of the floor. Yeah,
need to. Need a little more athleticism out there. I love Mr. Monsanto, but I don't know if he's an ACC caliber defender, ACC caliber shooter for sure, but they got to find a little bit of juice on that end. Syracuse, you know what? We were very high on this roster being better defensively, and it just wasn't. They were second nationally in block rate. Jesse Edwards did his job at the rim, but they didn't make anyone uncomfortable. They don't force turnovers. People shot the lights out from deep on them. Just the athleticism we thought they'd have in the wings did not come along. And this was also the worst Syracuse offense since 2018. So Matt, this was a bad team. This was the worst year the Orange have had. I don't really know where they go. Staying in the family, I just don't think is smart.
Yeah, I'm trying to be encouraged by Autry, but I don't know. He hasn't said anything that really gives me any warm and fuzzies, Kai. So I'm going to bet on more of the same with some slight modern modifications in how they play, but very little. And last season, they just didn't have the roster to actually defend. Same thing as the year before. I think Boeheim knew it. Honestly, he's like, all right, well, let's see what we have. Maybe we can shear our way to a deep tournament run. And he couldn't do it. Couldn't win enough games in the regular season. So yeah, not a really exciting time as a Syracuse basketball fan up there in Northern New York.
Yeah, well, I go ahead, Kai.
No, you're up. Go ahead.
I tweeted something about them and got a lot of Syracuse they are back. Look at this roster. It's just prime awesome. I haven't tweeted anything in a week because every time you tweet anything even halfway negative this stage of the year, people just have the rose-colored glasses on and scream at you about their school. So I don't know, Kai. I'm not super optimistic about the Orange.
They beat one team last year in the top 80 of KenPom. Ridiculous. I think Boeheim went the way of Bray last year. He kind of gave up. He was like, nothing I'm doing is working. I'm kind of out of it. And as a result, it kind of took its way through the roster, I suppose, that sort of attitude, because it just didn't seem like they were really into any game. That really showed at the end of the year, especially. Autry, I assume it's more of the same. I assume it'll be better than last year. They have to be, but I don't see them making the tournament next year, at least at this stage. Pretty early to tell, but yeah.
They're young and talented. They are. I guess I look at the roster again. It's a lot of young talent, but a lot of kind of what have you proven?
I think they need a total stylistic shift and a totally new mindset, but it's not going to happen with a guy that's been there for however many years.
Yeah, they play the 2-3. They never play their bench. They went into the bench a little more last year than typical for Boeheim. But yeah, Kai, to your point, down the stretch regular season, lost to Duke by 22 at home, lost at Clemson by 18, at Pitt by 17, home to Georgia Tech by 20. It was
gave up.
This team doesn't care anymore. That was really jarring. And yeah, Boeheim's gone, new era. We will see how that plays out. Boston College. maybe better than expectations in league play. They were one of the worst home favorites I've ever seen in the non-conference. They were banged up, had some injury issues, but they couldn't cover a spread, lost at home to Maine, lost at home to, was it Ryder? Or maybe not lost all those games, but were very, very close. Lost to Maine, Tarleton State on a neutral, New Hampshire at home, pulled out the Cornell. Maybe that's what I was thinking of.
Losing to Maine at home. That's all you got to say.
Can't do it. Can't do it. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Quentin Post matters.
Yeah. And I think it's just always going to be an issue of getting the talent level up to ACC. I don't really know how you do it there. I think you can be really well coached and you're going to go 9-11 in the ACC is probably good, Matt, for the Boston College program at this point.
Yes.
I like Earl. I do. I think he's had, again, I feel like I oversight the injury thing. They've had quite a few. It's just such a hard place to win. I think he gives you a fairly competitive, fun, foundational floor, kind of like Tinkle does at Oregon State out there in the Pac-12. He's a good X and O coach. Talent's never going to be up to snuff, but I think he gives you a fighting chance just because he can narrow the gap a little bit schematically and, maybe compete, maybe in a down ACC year, crawl toward 500 or a few games below, maybe get hot in the ACC tournament maker. That's where I think the destiny of this team is. So not exciting, but it is what it is.
Yeah. They were 170th in KenPom and
they were really
Christian
down last year. Yeah, I know.
Top 100 this year. I thought they'd be. I mean, it's because of the non-conference performance, really.
Yeah,
that's what it was.
Yeah, they kind of stayed the same once they got in conference play. Missing Quentin Post, he was like their best player a lot of times. They lost him.
He was really good.
He lost him for
he's back too.
At least. Yeah,
he's back.
Yep. Just need to stay healthy, and maybe they can get that elusive 10-10 mark in the ACC. It has not been in the cards for them very recently. All right, Virginia Tech, rather big disappointment here. Went 8-12 in the league. They had some injury issues down the stretch. They basically got no games where Couture and Maddox played. That's a problem. Rodney Rice was never really anything, the big recruit coming in. But we knew they weren't going to be good defensively, and they turned out to be horrible on that end. Just couldn't really defend in space. Justin Mutz couldn't cover up everything. Couture, like I said, missed time. He was their best on-ball defender on the perimeter. But with Basili and Padula out there, Kai, we probably should have been further down. And to your credit on the preseason pod, you were a little lukewarm on this squad.
Oh, was I? Good. Fantastic.
Yep.
They had some really, really awful luck. I remember to start conference play. They're 1-7, but they really should have been 4-3. And I think that kind of tanked their season and probably their mindset, their chemistry, and going forward. I mean, how can you come back from that? They did beat Duke after that, but just obviously was never a good defensive team. Yeah, Basili, again, getting Robbie Barron, you're going to have the same issues. Northwestern was awesome defensively. It wasn't really because of Robbie Barron. I worry going forward, Virginia Tech, they're going to have an awesome offense. They're going to be fun to watch, but I can't see massive improvement. I do like Mike Young, though, Matt.
Love Mike Young. I think Vatech had similar issues that Notre Dame and Syracuse had in not a lot of depth, not a lot of backcourt dynamism, and just the ceiling felt really, really low with this team. And so when you couple the fact that the depth never played out, you lost Maddox for a key stretch. Rodney Rice, kind of the highly touted freshman coming in, was pretty bad when he came back as well. So a lot went wrong for this team, and there was never a lot of margin for error. And there never will be at Vatech, even as good as Young is, even if they get more talent, which they have been. Margin for error is going to be pretty thin with the roster that's going to probably only run you 6-7 guys deep year in, year out.
Yeah, like Kai said, to start ACC play, they got one win in December, but then lost in overtime, lost by 2, lost by 3, lost by 4, 2 10-point losses, then lost by 1. You could flip 3 of those so easily, and their season looks drastically different. And so maybe that makes them a potential buy low candidate. It's what made him a buy low candidate late. That's why our guy Stuckey was all over him to win the ACC tournament. Once again, they did not do that, of course. Next up, Florida State. Team we beat the drum for in the preseason, thought that the prior year was going to be a fluke because of injuries, but I mean, they were ravaged again. Jalen Gainey never played. One of their freshmen never played. I think it's Bembry that had never played. Cameron Fletcher goes out with a long-term injury. It was just another kind of lost season. Yeah. The question becomes then, Kai, is it no CY Young, and that's really starting to rob them. No Gates in the schematic sense of things. They're really reliant on NBA talent. Your Terrence Manns, your Jonathan Isaacs, the guys that ended up going high in the draft and producing at the pro level. Not sure they have that anymore. Are they drifting into irrelevance, or is there going to be a bounce back the way Larinaga has had at Miami?
Yeah, so I'm kind of banking on with caution that these 2 years, injury trouble. But let's remember how good Hamilton was before that. Like, what, 15 straight years of just, well, not that long. He had a nice run of like 6 or 7 years where he was top 20 and really rose the program up. They were my best team from an ATS perspective betting on in the ACC. So,
yeah,
they had bright spots. They had some good games.
I agree.
Sprinkled in there. I think the injury stuff was really obviously horrible, and then they couldn't shoot, had some bad shooting luck against them. Hopefully it bounces back next year.
Oh yeah, the Baba suspension for the first 16 games or whatever. Forgot about that too. Yeah.
No, Kai, I agree. It's like, God, they were 205th. It wasn't like they were like
they're outside top
close.
200.
Like they were bad, right? I mean, Jim, I love you make the Miami comparison where Larinaga has those 2.5 really down years, and we sort of write them off. Or that now is that where Florida State is 2 straight down years. Maybe this is going to be the bounce back, but fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Fool me thrice, shame on me again. Because I will probably believe in a resurgence. But yeah, the roster feels like they're just kind of trying to throw stuff at the wall. Like they're losing the identity that made them so good with Hamilton, kind of the late part of the 10s. So yeah, I don't know. I'm torn on this team and the program generally with where it stands in Hamilton right now.
Yeah, last 2 years they've been horrendous defensively.
Like bad.
Yeah, really. I mean, this last year especially, but suddenly everybody's making threes against them. It's just not like a hard team to play against. They're not throwing the same kind of NBA caliber length at you. And I don't know that next year's roster really will have that either. The portal work has been.
Primo Spears from Georgetown. All they did was lose. So it doesn't excite me at all.
I think Primo Spears is like 3-40 in conference play in his college career, because Duquesne was like 1-18, and then last year he was 2-18. Right. So 3-36, I think, is what he is. I'm not that interested in him. Nickelberry from LaSalle, also not super exciting.
In general, I don't like getting players that were on losing teams in the portal. I think that's a real.
I agree. Yep.
Unless it wasn't really their fault, but it's hard to tell. That's kind of an intangible.
It's case by case. By case. I think generally, though, that's a good broad stroke assumption. I'm on board with that.
All right, let's hit 2 schools that are maybe going to be a little more optimistic about the future, given some coaching hires that they made this offseason. Georgia Tech will start there. Matt, I'm still bitter. They won 6 league games. I'm just going to bring that up again. I have no idea how they got there, but man, I love the hire of Damon Stoudemire. I think that takes them in a much better, more modern direction. And he's, okay work in the portal. I think he's going to raise the floor for them, at least in the first year. But man, he was fantastic Pacific, really got guys to buy in. Would imagine he does the same here. I think Georgia Tech will be competing before long.
I think he was one of the first coaches at the mid-major level. Like that 1 year he had at Pacific was at 2020, maybe. Yeah. Get a bunch of new guys, get them to buy in, play really, really well together. Like truly kind of had that FAU type of team first mentality. In the current age of college hoop, I think Stoudemire is a fantastic get for Tech. I really do. I'm with you. I think the floor will be high every year and the ceiling's a little bit higher than you think, because I think he'll actually get some dudes. I think the caliber of talent walking in there will be better than you saw with Passer in the last couple of years.
Yeah, right now they don't have. I don't
right now, but I think year 2 and 3. Yeah, I think you're excited long term, GT for sure.
Yeah, same. I like Stoudemire a lot. I think he's a really good coach. We'll see how he does Georgia Tech. But Jim, the transfer class right now, it's a smattering of kind of like misfits and offshoots of other programs. And I mean, I don't think Florida even wanted Kwesi Reeves. We'll see if he does well in the ACC. He's not your number
Abrams,
one
like the one guy I like.
I like really Abram, man. In on Abram.
Yeah. Duona, we know what he's like in the ACC already. Tyshawn Claude's great, but he was in a much lesser league. We'll see if he can produce. I don't like any UMass player from last year. So if you're like Kapara, he was a good recruit, but not impressive on the floor. So we'll see.
Yeah. Definitely wait and see on year 1, but long-term outlook, it just feel a lot more optimistic. They got out of kind of the stale, like what are they kind of stagnation that they had hit under Pastner. Now I think there's some upside. Same thing goes for Notre Dame to me, honestly. I like Mike Bray. He's an absolute treasure of a man, but Kai, my favorite part of the ACC preview pod was you just going, I am sick of this core Like talking about Cormac Ryan, Dane Goodwin, Nate Laszewski is like, all right, how many more times can we watch them be horrific defensively?
Yeah.
And they were especially bad this year. No rim protection at all. And then they weren't quite as potent on the offensive end, not even top 100 offensively, Matt. That kind of jumped out to me. I thought that core was like automatic top 60 or something. So I think it was the right time for them to move on. I'm glad it was kind of done amicably and not, some bitter process. But this team was really bad, really disappointing all the way around this year. And I think Shrewsbury offers some big time hope for the future.
I love Shrewsbury. I love Mike Bray. I thought all of this works for everyone, right? This is like the ultimate. We all get the table. We agree that, okay, Bray, it's time to go. Okay, Shrewsbury, we're going to bring you in. It just works all the way around. I'm happy for Notre Dame. I love Mike Bray. Kyle, we fell in love with him at the MAC, obviously. So just really in on. Go ahead.
He's a fantastic guy. Shrewsbury, I would not expect
charisma.
I would not expect miracles year one from Shrewsbury. I think he's a fantastic coach. He rocks. But even his first year at Penn State, they weren't that good. And this there's no one on the roster yet. So we'll see who he gets. I just don't. I think he's more of a continuity guy. I think he's more of a get his guys in the program type of coach. Long term, I think there's some positive things to expect, but next season we'll see.
Yeah, he also faces the academic standards. It's actually really tough. I think Boston College and Notre Dame both face that big time in this conference. And you can still get a lot of really like the smart players that are really good. Notre Dame has a lot more appeal than BC, but it isn't just, pulled a bunch of guys out of the portal. You've got to make sure they fit and can actually get through the admissions department. All right, we finish on the dour, dark note of Louisville. Horrible year, no other way around it. They got blown out repeatedly over and over, finished 290th, by far the worst in school history. I think the only really relevant question here is, will Kenny Payne be the coach in 24-25? Kai, does he get a third year?
I don't know. I think they're going to stink again. At least he got guards in the portal this time. He's starting to. He got Sky Clark and Jalen Anderson. It's not good enough. Sky Clark is a big mystery. Jalen Anderson's fine. It's not enough. I think Payne's. I don't love saying "I told you so." It's rude, but I told you so. We all thought Louisville would be terrible, and they were even worse.
Matt and I bet them inside the top 100.
So. Oh well, yes. I mean, getting no guards last year, that just kind of tells you. That tells me what you are like as a coach. If that's your game plan going into the year, having one scholarship guard in your roster, that's a terrible start. And then Nolan Smith's recent stuff about analytics on Twitter.
Totally
God. Bury this coaching staff. It's not good enough. They will finish near the basement again in the ACC.
Nolan, what we doing? The people's champ. And Smitty. It hurts my soul. It really does. I feel like the problem with Payne is that he talked to all of his guys that he inherited, and he's like, man, I really like this group here, guys. Like, we got something special. No one believes in us. And he tried 6'8". Too hard to prove to the guys that they had like, hey, I believe in you guys. I'm not going to bring in a bunch of new. No, Kenny, you should bring a bunch of new guys. The guys you had weren't any good. They weren't any good. I don't understand.
He brought in Huntley Hatfield, former 5-star pedigree, and he wasn't good. He's probably going to have the same thing with Sky Clark. I just think he's not good. Russ says over under 10 wins on Louisville next year. I'll probably say under. Like, I just don't see why they're going to be at all competent. I don't like the roster. I don't like the coach. Like Kai said, that Nolan Smith stuff was like outright embarrassing. I would be furious if I were a Louisville fan at how ignorant that was. It's bleak. It's bleak right now, and it's probably not going to get any brighter. Kai, it feels like when we had Kim Anderson, and it just wasn't going to get better until the page was turned.
Yeah, they're in the Kim Anderson phase. Yep,
very much. Very much.
Yeah,
so.
They're taking some swings on like the 5-star reclamation project, but they just sang praises for earlier in this show. But when like you're gonna sign up Sky Clark to be like your potential best player, that's probably not the right recipe.
Yeah. They've got to turn the page and sooner rather than later. So Matt, will he get a third year, or do you think it's done after this?
No, I think it's one and done. Yeah, I think they're excited to move on from this failure.
Yeah, the super plugged in fellas on Field of 68, Goodman, Borzello, Douster, Norlander, Parrish, all just did a pod like right before ours. And I think Borzello was the highest on him getting a third year, and he said 50-50. Everybody else was like 30%. He gets a third year. So
if it is just last again, there's no way. You can't do it.
Yeah, you can't have your combined ACC finishes of 2 years be 30.
At Louisville.
15th and 15th. Yeah, that's bad. I believe that wraps it up. Any extended thoughts, fellas, on the rest of the ACC, or shall we close the book here?
I mean, is there any indication this league is going to be a top 3 league next season? I don't think so. Still, it still feels pretty down to me. We just went through all those teams, and I still see like 3 or 4 tournament teams again.
Jim, I just went through your transfer tracker. You have everything, all your transfers rated. Like 90% of the top 75 guys are off the board, right? Like there could be some late entries for sure, but like Louisville making some big splash or any of these other ACC teams making some big splash, the odds are not super high. Like, I mean, what you have now isn't all that far off from what you're going to have next October. So yeah, I'm kind of with Kai on kind of more of the same from the ACC.
Yeah, it just doesn't seem like they've optimized NIL the way, especially the SEC, but even Big 12, great point. Big 10 maybe getting there. Not all schools are that strong, but what was the quote from Jesse Edwards? He's like, they're lost figuring out NIL at Syracuse. And it's like, well, that's a problem. It's what you need to compete at this point. And it seems like this league's lagging behind. Maybe you get the one postseason run, and hey, who was the one that had a good postseason run, Kai? The team with it's like the banner for NIL. Miami.
Wallet Hurricanes, baby.
Yep.
They all paid for their team. Not Syracuse, though.
Yeah. Well,
also, hey, Ruiz had some hot water, Jimbo. I wonder if the money will keep flowing in there with the allegations swirling around the lifelong honor. Yeah.
But it does help when you're successful with NIL. I believe it was like they're talking, the other Field 68 guys talking about Texas Tech's NIL well has dried up a little bit because they paid a bunch last year and went nowhere with it. And so the return on investment wasn't really seen. That's going to kind of be a thing to monitor as NIL sort of sorts out and becomes more stable potentially in future years. All right, that's it. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Pat, Russ, Scott, everybody else in the chat, thank you for giving some chatter as we went through the episode. That's it. We'll be back. I think we'll probably go next week, get one episode in before we head to Charleston with Mr. Matthew and celebrate his existence on